Hello and welcome to Lunch and Learn Wednesdays. I'm your host, Jacob Falkenberg, and thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to be talking about business district membership campaigns. And for those of you who don't know, membership is really the cornerstone to a successful business association, and campaigns should be done every year to ensure that you're maintaining your membership, you're getting new members. But a lot of people don't realize that these campaigns are kind of a year-round process. So we're going to talk a little bit about that process, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to get out of here. There we go. Okay, so let's just start by talking about why membership is important. Um, well, for one, membership dues are going to give you the revenue that you need to operate as a business association. So it should be a pretty significant part of your budget since most business associations kind of have limited revenue sources. So it's important to grow membership year over year to maintain that revenue to do the work that you want to do. Also, your members are the ones who are going to eventually and hopefully turn into your volunteers. You know, these are people that are going to be your prospective board members, committee members, people who are volunteering at events and just kind of helping you do what you want to do. And you can't really operate without the support of those volunteers. So the more members you have, the more volunteers you have. And then the more members you have, the more credibility you have as a organization, right? So it kind of turns into a snowball effect where as other businesses see that membership is increasing, it makes the organization seem more beneficial and results in new members. So how do you measure strong membership? Well, a lot of the times it is, the percentage of businesses in the district that are members. So, that's one thing you're going to want to track is how many businesses are in the district, how many do we currently have as members, and, when you're thinking of a goal, what percentage of those businesses do we want to have as members in the association? You can also track the diversity of your membership. And, that's not only the types of businesses you have. So, looking at how many restaurants do we have? How many retailers do we have? How many service businesses do we have? And does that reflect the business mix in the district? So if your district has a lot of restaurants, you should have a lot of restaurant members, that sort of thing. But it can also be determined by district geography, right? You might have a lot of businesses from a certain part of the district. If your district has, certain areas where there's a high concentration of businesses, but you want to make sure you have representation from all parts of the district. And it could also be racial and ethnic diversity, right? Does the business owner diversity reflect the demographic of the district? So, seeking to have diverse input from all different types of people who live and work in the district. You can also measure your board representation and makeup. So, do the people that serve on the board represent the types of businesses that are in the district? So, again, if you've got a lot of retailers in the district, it's important to have retailers on your board. Also, member engagement. So how many businesses are participating in the activities that you're doing? Um, Strong member engagement really reflects that there's a match for the benefits that you're offering. People are finding value in those things. Weak member engagement might indicate that you want to rethink some of your benefits. And then the revenue that you're generating, of course. If you're able to generate enough revenue to do the things that you want to do, then you can consider that your membership is strong. Okay, So let's go and take a look at how it's done. And really, there's no magic bullet for strong membership. It's really about building relationships. You want to engage with the businesses in the district throughout the year. Learn about what are their concerns, what their interests are, what are they struggling with, and how can the association help. And only then can you really gain their confidence and make that ask to join the association. So membership is a lot like momentum, right? So as I kind of mentioned earlier, the fewer members you have, the less engaged people are. Um, and then the less engagement leads to less revenue, less credibility, fewer volunteers for the association. And then that in turn leads to less of an ability to provide benefits, right? You need revenue and you need volunteers in order to provide the benefits. And that kind of turns into a death spiral, really, for an organization because as you're able to provide less benefits, you're going to have fewer people rejoining year over year. And it's hard to get out of that, right? What you really want is more members through, right sizing those benefits, making sure those benefits are really reflective of what the needs of the businesses are. That leads to more appeal for the association, and then more revenue, credibility, and volunteers. So you want to be a contender. Uh, Running a membership campaign is a lot like running a small business, right? First, you need to know your customer. And in this situation, the customer is the small business owner. So, like I said, building relationships with the small business owner, doing outreach, maybe even surveys to determine what do they need to be successful. And then you want to have a product they want. So in this case, the product is the benefits that you're offering as an association. What are you doing as far as events and marketing and providing opportunities for them to work together, to advocate for themselves as a district? And then you want to find the right price. So that's going to be the amount of dues that you charge. And we'll talk a little bit about dues later, but really it's about determining, what you want to do as an association, how much is it going to cost, and then feasibly, what do we have to charge in order to do it? And then make the sale. So, that could include sending an email, it could include a phone call. A lot of the times, there's an in-person exchange that has to happen before someone is willing to invest in your organization, right? They want to trust that they're going to get a return on their investment. So that really requires having a standing relationship with them where they trust you and feel confident that you're going to deliver in the benefits that you've promised. And that's the final step, delivering the goods and doing so year over year and being successful. Okay, so what does it take to be successful in your membership campaign? The first thing you're going to want to have is a business contact list. And this is something that should be developed year over year, just because the business mix in your district is constantly changing. Um, Businesses might close, new businesses might open, they might move, they might have new owners. So, really, it's important to continuously update your business contact list over the year as you're getting new information about what's the best way to get in touch with the businesses in the district and what new businesses are out there that we need to reach out to. And then building strong relationships, as I said, is huge. Before you can make that ask, you really need to make sure that the businesses know who you are, what you stand for, how you operate as an organization, and that you're reliable. And then you want to have valuable benefits. So those are the things that you're going to look at with the board year over year to determine, okay, what did we do this year that was successful? What did people really get excited about? What were people being engaging with? what maybe wasn't so successful, or it could have been successful a couple of years ago, but doesn't seem to be resonating now, and what can we do in its place to really address some of the needs that the businesses have now that they might not have had previously. And the needs can change year over year as the city changes, as the business mix changes. Different types of businesses are going to benefit from different types of benefits. You want to have a professional approach, and that is, making sure that you've got a website up to date that looks professional. You want to have materials with your logo that kind of follow your branding, that really have a clear dictation of the benefits that you're providing. Really making it seem like you are a reputable organization, that you are. And then a 3-month campaign, which we'll talk about the steps for that campaign in a little bit. And that's going to take multiple hands working together to run that campaign and do the outreach, and make sure you're recruiting and maintaining the businesses that you have. You also want to make sure you have tracking and payment systems in place. So as businesses are paying their dues, how do you track who owes dues and who has already paid their dues? How much did they pay? Did they maybe choose a higher or lower level than last year? What businesses need to be followed up with? So having a tracking system in place, even if it's just a spreadsheet, is really helpful to make sure that you're able to month by month kind of keep track of your to-do list. Um, and then payment systems, of course, the days of businesses mailing checks, those days might be numbered. Some businesses do still do that, so having a PO box available for that, but also giving them the option to pay by credit card, and having that, embedded in your website, I think is really helpful, making it as easy as possible for them to commit to joining. What doesn't work in a membership campaign is really expecting a business list to fall into your lap. So the business list really requires boots on the ground research. Unfortunately, the city does not provide contact information for business owners. Um, you can get the address, the physical mailing address for a business through the Secretary of State, but to find out emails and phone numbers, it's going to be a mixture of visiting businesses in your district, doing that research through Google Maps, and really giving opportunities for businesses to come and meet you. What doesn't work is sending an email and waiting for members to knock on your door. So I think email is definitely a part of the outreach that happens in a membership campaign, but also phone calls and in-person follow-ups are extremely important in getting people to recognize what you're doing. We get so many emails these days that sometimes the important stuff gets lost in the shuffle. So, having a follow-up plan that doesn't include email is really important. And then vague or mismatched benefits. And we talked a little bit about this. And that's, making sure you're looking at your benefits list every year to make sure it's still a good fit for the businesses based on, the current business mix and the feedback that you're getting from the businesses in the district. So, talking about benefits a little bit, you can kind of think about them in categories. And every district has its own unique set of benefits based on the types of businesses that are in the district, the needs of those businesses, and the built form of the district. If you've got a walkable district, you might be doing certain types of events versus, larger spread out districts that don't have that same ability. So the first and most obvious one that you want to offer are signature events. And that could be an annual street fair in the summertime. It could also be a holiday event where you're doing a tree lighting or some sort of shopping promotion during the holidays. It could be something around Halloween. It could be something during a shoulder season, right? It really is just dependent on what are you known for as an organization, and what's something that you're able to commit to do every year. And then you want to also provide advertising, marketing, and district identity projects. So, that's your website. Do your members have representation on your website? Your social media? Are you sharing the promotions and things that are going on via Instagram or other social media outlets? Um, Newsletters? Do you have something that's going out just talking about what's going on in the district? Um, and district identity, right? Like what is the identity of your district? What is your brand? And how do people kind of understand that as they're walking through the district? And that's not only the branding of the organization, but the physical representation that is happening throughout your district. So that could be banners, it could be signage, it could be murals, if you're known for being more of an arts district. How do people know that they're in your district? Also, member networking and education. So, mixers, bringing in guest speakers to kind of talk about, how can businesses improve? How can businesses connect with the city if they have issues? So, really providing opportunities for the business owners to speak with each other, meet each other, and develop relationships so they can work together. Advocacy, of course, is a big one. If there are things happening in your district that the city is an opportunity for them to help with, um, the business association is the collected voice for the businesses in the district. So having an advocacy plan, whether that's sending letters on behalf of the businesses in the district, showing up at city council and testifying on behalf of specific things, developing relationships with city bureaus. So if there is a problem, you have a contact person to reach out to directly to make sure that that gets resolved pretty quickly. And then finally, Venture Portland benefits. So, of course, as a member of Venture Portland, your member businesses are welcome to take advantage of our benefits that we offer, like the lunch and learns and the member meetups, and sharing events on our events calendar and our social media and things like that. So, certainly make sure that they're aware that they can take advantage of that because that will require no additional work on your behalf. Okay, so back to benefits. Different businesses are interested in different benefits, right? So thinking about the different types of businesses you have in the district, you've got your retailers, you've got your food and beverage, you've got your service and professional. Those are the three big ones that kind of comprise a business district. But don't forget about your health and wellness businesses because they're not as visible during your more traditional events. So how can they kind of plug in to the association? Your home-based businesses, do they have an opportunity to get some visibility? Whether that could be, being mentioned on the website or on promotional materials, things like that, social media industrial and manufacturing businesses, right? Like they're not as public facing, but they still want to have a voice in the organization. So can they have some sort of representation on the board or things of that nature? And of course, your property owners, right? So not every business owner owns their space. So it's important to have relationships with the property owners in your district, giving them opportunities to meet with other property owners, meet with business owners, to not only help to fill vacancies, but to kind of help the entire community decide, what do we need as a district, and how can we work with a property owner to get that? Okay, so we're going to do a quick activity to get you thinking about strengthening your benefits. So, what you want to do is, if you have a piece of paper, think about writing down one way you can strengthen an existing benefit. So, something that you've been doing already, and it's been successful, but based on the feedback that you're hearing, maybe there's a tweak you can make to it to either help with business engagement or increasing attendance or increasing the revenue that it's generating. And then thinking about if we had to get rid of a benefit so we could offer a new one, what would a new benefit serve, right? What type of business is not currently taking advantage of your current benefits? And who do you want to focus on creating a new benefit for? So, if you're getting a lot of participation from retailers, from restaurants, but maybe not so much from, your health and wellness businesses, what could you do to help them? And then just maybe one or two new benefit ideas that serve that currently underrepresented sector in your district. So we'll just give it 1 minute and we'll come right back. Okay, we are back. Does anybody have either a way they can strengthen an existing benefit or a proposal for a new benefit that might benefit a type of business in the district that isn't currently engaged with the organization? I know there's a small group, so we might not have the answers yet, but that's okay. I would just write this down, and this is maybe an activity that you can do with your board at the next board meeting to get their input. What do they think, right? What benefit are we offering that could be improved, and how can we improve it? And then, yeah, who's not participating, and how can we do something to kind of get them involved? So I would bring that back to your board. Okay, let's move on and take a look at dues. So we always get questions about how much should we charge for dues, right? And dues is really an art, not a science. Um, Again, the most important thing is dues should provide enough revenue to deliver the benefits that you want to offer. And many organizations offer a sliding scale for their dues because, there's different size businesses in the district, and different size businesses and different types of businesses um, can and are willing to pay certain amounts of money. So a lot of districts will do, a sliding scale based on the number of employees a business has, but also the type of business, right? If you have nonprofits or home-based businesses or industrial businesses, they, I think, should be given the option to pay different amounts. Just so it's kind of fair and everyone feels like they can participate and they're not being, overtaxed. During the pandemic, another concept kind of came up with dues, and that was the pay it forward concept. So there were certain businesses that really struggled during the pandemic, and there was others that actually did quite well. So a lot of districts put the option on their membership forms to sponsor a business that maybe wants to join but just can't financially commit right now. And that allows them to be a good community partner and also allows a business that wouldn't be able to participate And then, that also increases your potential volunteer capacity, right? If somebody might not have to pay for their membership, but they're still able to participate. A lot of districts will also offer incentives for joining early and also plan activities accordingly. So, just using Venture Portland as an example, because Venture Portland is structured very similarly to a business association. We're a membership-based nonprofit organization, and we start our membership campaign in December because we our membership year kind of runs on a calendar year. And we have an incentive during the month of December that says if you do join in December, even though your dues year isn't technically over yet, you'll get an early bird rate. And that just really incentivizes some people, if they are thinking of joining, but the dues are a little bit too high, they could join a discounted rate if they're willing to commit early on. And then we have activities happening in the first few months of the year to incentivize the districts to join. So our grants program happens in the months of February and March. And in order to apply for a grant, you have to pay your dues as an organization. So that's a great way to kind of get people incentivized early on in the campaign to join because they want to participate in that activity. And then we have our annual meeting in April. And really, we want to know who is a member of the organization by the annual meeting because those are the people who are eligible to join the board. So you want to make sure that you're setting your campaign to start, at least 3, 4 months before your annual meeting, so you know who your membership is, so you can elect your board. So there's kind of an order of operations to keep in mind. So back to dues, just thinking about a simple way to determine, how much you want to charge for your dues. Um, First, you need to kind of have your budget figured out, right? What are our projected expenses for the year? Then you're going to say, okay, other than membership dues, what revenue streams are we planning on bringing in to kind of cover those costs, right? So that could be grant revenue, it could be sponsorship, it could be advertising revenue, vendors, that sort of thing. So, how much are you planning on bringing in through those activities? Subtract that from your total expenses. And then look at, what did you bring in last year with your current membership? If you were to keep your membership at the same rate and you to get everybody to sign up again, what would you bring in? And then depending on what's left, that will help you determine, okay, we either need to have a certain percentage growth in our membership, and is that viable? Or we need to increase dues to kind of make up for the gap if there is one. Okay, so you've done your planning. It's time to get your house in order for your campaign. So, first thing you need to know is your membership year. As I said, Venture Portland operates on a calendar year. Some districts operate on a fiscal year. Some have a rolling membership, right, where it's districts can just or businesses can just sign up throughout the year. So figure that out. And then figure out your annual meeting date. So your annual meeting is when you're going to be electing your board. And as I said, you want your campaign to start 3, 4 months before your annual meeting, so you know who's eligible to join your board. And that's going to determine your campaign start and end date. Then also you want to have your dues figured out. So sliding scale, what's the lowest and the highest that we're going to offer. And also a prorate policy, right? So if you're not on a rolling membership year, what if someone signs up halfway through the year? They might have missed out on a couple of events and promotions. Do they get a discounted rate? Or maybe they pay the full rate and they have to pay, or they don't have to pay for the following year. Something like that. but have it figured out so when they inevitably ask, you'll have an answer. Make sure you have your business contact list updated. So, who left this over the past year? Who is new? Make sure that that is really representative of the current state of the district. And then have your payment systems in place, whether that's PayPal or Square, just ways for people to pay for their dues. And then you want to work on your membership packet, right? So a lot of districts will include the following. So a solicitation letter, and that's just a letter from your president on Business Association letterhead that talks about all the great things that you did over the past year, and maybe teases a couple new things that are coming down the pipeline. But it's coming from the president. It's very personal. It has a human element to it. And then you're going to have your benefits sheet, and that's going to outline all the things that you're going to do over the following year that's going to benefit businesses, that's going to be the reason why they want to join the association. You're also going to have your membership form, and this is going to talk about the different levels that are available for membership and how much they all cost. And you might get different things for different levels. So having that figured out, if someone's going to join at the highest level, what do they get that's different than the person that's going to join at the lowest level? So making sure that you got hard copies of that you can hand out to businesses when you're doing in-person visits, but also having a version on your website that they can kind of review on their own. And finally, of course, the online payment option on the website, but also on your phone, right? If you're visiting businesses and talking about membership, making the commitment right there in person is usually the easiest, right? Because if you don't do that, they're going to get distracted and forget and move on. So here's an example of a little trifold pamphlet that St. John's boosters use when they're doing in-person visits to businesses. And this is really helpful because it's just quick and easy way to help the businesses understand what your organization does. There's a quick About Us section that talks about the history of the organization, and then it goes into the different benefits that are offered by the organization. There's some event posters to really help visualize all the things that are happening throughout the year that they get to participate in. And then finally, a QR code where they can easily get to the website to learn more information that wouldn't fit on a promotional material like this. And then you can see here's just a screen grab from the Boosters website that talks about membership as well. You can see it has a lot of the same information that's on that pamphlet, talking about the organization, the benefits that are provided, and then making it really clear, choosing all the different levels of membership that are available and giving the businesses options so you can get as much participation as possible. Okay, so let's talk about what the campaign looks like. If you build it, they will come. You remember that movie, Field of Dreams? Well, unfortunately, Kevin Costner lied. It's not as simple as that. Follow-up is critical in a membership campaign. A lot of the times, you're going to have to ask more than once, and that's where that having multiple ways to contact businesses comes into play. You got to find the best messenger, right? So, not only figuring out how to contact businesses, but who's the best person to make that ask and talk to those businesses. And, that could be someone who's in a similar industry. So, a restaurant owner is going to have a easier time talking to a restaurant owner than a retailer, right? So, who on your board is the best fit to help with outreach? And it could be an industry, it could be somebody that is a neighbor or on the same block. It could be someone that they already have a relationship with. So as you're kind of planning the outreach for the campaign, have a conversation with your board members to see, what businesses do they already have relationships with, and assigning those businesses to those board members to do the outreach. when it's a situation where, somebody hasn't renewed. But you want to avoid guilt and sending out invoices and voicemail. That really never works. That just pushes people away. It's really more about finding the best time and place and person to do the outreach. The membership cycle, you can kind of think of it, as I said, it's a year-round cycle that kind of goes in a circle here. So at the bottom left, you see the campaign launches, and that's when you are sending out your promotional material, you're visiting businesses, you're sending out emails, you're making phone calls. Those are the when the asks are happening, and that's a 3-4 month process leading up to your annual meeting where you have your board elections and the campaign ends. But it doesn't really end there, right? It's a year-round process. So even though your campaign is over, you still want to welcome the businesses that have joined and engage with them, making sure they're aware of the activities that are happening, inviting them to participate. And that happens over the next 3 or 4 months. And then you're getting into mid-year, and it's time to start thinking about planning the campaign for the following year. So what does that look like? Is there a membership committee that's going to help with that? Starting to determine what the benefit's going to be. What do we have to charge for our dues? So have we figured out our budget for the following year? Making sure those committee meetings are on the calendar and you've got people who are willing to participate and start to plan those campaigns and create the materials and update the materials so they reflect what you're going to be doing in the following year. So again, this is kind of a month to month way to look at the membership campaign. In month one, you're planning. You're working with your committee to figure out all the benefits and the dues and whatnot. And then month two, that's when you send out that member packet to the businesses in the district that has all the information about all the great stuff you did last year, all the great stuff you're planning to do in the coming year. And then month three, you're going to be tracking. So who signed up already, based on that initial email. And some people even send out hard copies of membership packet via snail mail because we don't get that much stuff via snail mail, so sometimes it feels official. But really, yeah, tracking who has signed up, who needs to be followed up with, and who needs to be acknowledged, right? So the people that have already signed up need to be acknowledged, and the people that haven't signed up need to be followed up with via email, phone, in person. And hopefully your board's going to help with that. So, finding the best messenger for that. And then you get to month four, that's your annual meeting. That's when you elect your board. So for most associations, you have to be a member to be on the board. So people should be signed up by then in order to be elected to your board. Month five, that's when you're analyzing, you're debriefing with the committee and the board, and you're celebrating, right? Volunteer recognition is super important. So, maybe the person on the committee that had the most renewals gets, a bottle of wine or a bouquet of flowers or something like that. But track, how much do we increase membership by? And what was the feedback we received from the businesses that declined membership? And taking that into consideration for next year's campaign. But of course, throughout the year, you're delivering the benefits and you're staying in communication with those members, making sure you're visible both online, in their inbox, and in person. Setting a goal is really important when you're thinking of your membership campaign. For example, if you were to start your campaign June 1st, by September 1st, we want to have 25% of the businesses in the district signed up. So that's your short-term goal. It doesn't have to be, some districts have so many businesses where 25% would be unrealistic. Some districts have so few businesses where, a higher goal might be more realistic, 50, 75%. And then you want to have a long-term goal. That could be 50, 80% of the businesses in the district. I don't think you're ever going to get everybody, but it's nice to have something to shoot for. where you can, increase your membership year over year, 10 to 20% to get there eventually. You also want to have targeted business sectors and nodes. So that's again, I was talking about who's not participating, um, and do we want to really focus our outreach efforts on them? And that could be, an anchor business or a legacy business in the district that's not participating but has a lot of influence. Um, and it could be a specific part of the district that isn't being represented in the membership or on the board. If there's multiple commercial areas in your district. So I will send out kind of an example of what the conversation is going to look like when you're approaching businesses about membership. But essentially, it is really about building a relationship first, right? Before making that ask, having conversations with businesses about things not membership related. Um, so you can say to them, I understand your business and what you're struggling with or what your concerns are. And here's how we've helped you over the past year. We've done X, Y, and Z. And it's important to have quantifiable ROI, right? So at this event, we had X amount of people and businesses reported, an X amount of increase in sales on that day. Really having, tracking what you're doing during events to, have those talking points already prepared. And of course, you want to have that benefits sheet that you can hand to them that kind of outlines everything that the association does. And then testimonials from other businesses are also really powerful, right? I think hearing from a peer really helps to drive home the point that this is, valuable work and beneficial to them. And then having that payment mechanism in place. So most phones will allow for tapping credit card if they want to pay on the spot. That's usually the best time to do it. But you got to make that ask, right? Eventually, you got to ask them if they want to join and also give them a deadline, right? So that comes back to, well, we've got our street fair coming up on, July 1st. So if you want to participate in the street fair, you got to sign up by June 1st. So, we can get your your vendor booth set up and all that stuff. So, uh, kind of working in some sort of incentive to make sure that they are incentivized to sign up quickly and they don't forget about it. And this just talks a little bit about what are the success rates in the different outreach methods. An email with no follow-up, that's going to only result in a 1 to 3 success rate. A mailed packet, so that snail mail piece, you can get a 15% success rate on average. The phone follow-up, that shoots you up to 25%. And then, of course, the in-person ask, when you're looking at somebody, it's much harder for them to say no. So you see a 50% success rate. But of course, those are the most time intensive. So really being strategic about who is getting what follow-up is going to lead to the most success for you. As I said, there's no silver bullet. The most successful districts have a balanced approach to relationship building. You got to meet people where they are, whether that's in person, online, in their mailbox, and really, have a relationship with them before making the ask. So if you're working with a board or a membership committee, there are some things you want to kind of keep in mind. You want to give them a timeline, right? So make sure that they understand that this is a 3 or 4 month process. We've really got to make sure we've got all our members by a specific date because it's dependent on this, this, and this. Providing scripts is super helpful for phone calls and in-person meets with businesses to help give them talking points and make sure that they're able to, comfortably talk about the benefits that the organization offers and answer questions about how the organization operates. Again, as I said, capitalize on existing relationships or similarities. So as you're kind of assigning specific businesses for your board and committee members to reach out to. What things do they have in common? Do they already have a relationship? Do they have a similar business? Are they located in a similar part of the district? Things like that. A little friendly competition also goes a long way. So, not only having a specific goal for your membership, but the person that is the most successful gets recognized some way. Whether that's just a verbal recognition at the next meeting, or if it's, a prize of some kind, or, a shout out on social media, that sort of thing. You want to celebrate their success because they are volunteers, and it feels good when your hard work is recognized. Okay, so that's a lot of talking. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just be available for any questions that you might have kind of come up with during that period. As I said, I will follow up with a packet of information and some resources that you can kind of take back to your board to kind of help them with the membership campaign planning process. But is there anything in the meantime that I can answer about membership or anything else that's happening in the district at this time?
I don't have any questions at the moment. I just have a lot of notes.
That's okay.
Yeah, we're
It is
starting
a
we're
lot of
starting our
information.
campaign because of the street fair, so we're kind of changing things on the fly, but this was very timely, so thank you.
Good, good. Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of information to unpack. So, take some time to review it and again, bring it back to the board and start
Yes.
having those discussions around the timeline and the different pieces that go into it. Who's going to be responsible for what, and
Yep.
if questions come up, you can always, reach out to me if things come up after that conversation happens. But this is a good kind of overview of how the process typically works. But of
Hmm.
course, every district does it a little bit differently, and you're going to find that out pretty quickly as what
Yeah.
works and what doesn't with the businesses in your district.
Yeah. No, this is great. Thank you so much.
Of course, yeah, no problem. Thank you for taking the time to be here. If there wasn't anything else, then we will adjourn for the day. But yeah, I'll send out some more information probably tomorrow, and then look that over and just let me know if anything comes up.
Will
And good
do.
luck at
Thank
the
you.
street fair.
Thanks.
It's going to be,
It'll be
I
my
mean,
first one.
it's always a huge event, so I know it's a huge a lift for you all, but I people always look forward to it, so I'm sure it's going to be great.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
All right, you take care,
You
and I'll
too.
talk to you
Bye.
soon.